God of War's 20th anniversary has come and gone, and while so many were hoping for a big game reveal to cap off this milestone, that doesn't mean that God of War may not have any presence in 2025 or next year. In fact, a new rumor suggests that a new God of War game may release later this year, and this game is not one that many have been expecting. On top of that, while the Greek Saga remasters may seem to be a project that have been put to bed, there's definitely a big chance these games will get their proper reintroduction in due time. From remasters to returning to Greece, new horizons in ancient Egypt and beyond, let's dive into what the rumors, leaks, and what's happening over at Santa Monica Studio are all suggesting may be in store for us God of War fans in the near and distant future. Call it copium or whatever you want to call it. Yes, I'm coping hard. But I do strongly believe we are likely to get another God of War game, whether that be a collection or something smaller, before the next mainline God of War game comes out in likely 3 to 4 years from now. Santa Monica Studio has been hard at work following the release of God of War Ragnarok, as the team is working on, quote, a lot of different things, unquote, according to God of War director Cory Barlog in an interview with LA Times. With the studio rumored to have split their team to work on a new IP while also continuing the massive success that is the God of War franchise, new job listings have crept up over the years since Ragnarok released that hint at more God of War games around the corner. With Sony stating last year that there would be no major first-party releases until the second half of 2025, this new rumor we are about to go over may shed some light as to what this future God of War game that Santa Monica Studios is working on could be. In our previous God of War update video, credible insider Jeff Grubb over at Giant Bomb late February suggested that the much-rumored God of War Trilogy Remaster rumors would be announced closer to the anniversary of God of War. Well, what do you know? Outside of a handful of cosmetic updates for God of War Ragnarok, soundtrack releases, an exhibition, and an awesome star-studded panel featuring some of the talent instrumental in the past 20 years of God of War that arrived for its 20th anniversary celebration, no big game announcements were made, leaving many to think that this remaster/remake project was essentially a collection too good to be true. More on the collection later, but just days ago on March 22nd, Jeff Grubb made another post on Blue Sky indicating that another God of War game is slated to be coming out this year, and one that is not a mainline entry, but more of a side story project. Okay, everyone keeps asking about this, so I've tried to find out more, posted Grubb. There's still a Greek God of War thing coming out this year, but it's not a remaster collection, it's a new side story project. Later on in this thread, Grubb dismissed the many earlier rumors suggesting a potential remastered collection of the Greek Saga titles, but instead reflected a big rumor earlier this year about Kratos returning back to Greece. I was never told about the remaster collection, posted Grubb, but I asked a source about the rumors that I saw were focused on a collection, and they told me that nothing God of War would happen at the State of Play, but something could show up at the anniversary. So, despite Sony celebrating God of War's 20th anniversary with a free Ragnarok update, a themed exhibition, and new merchandise, there was no word on the future of the franchise from this event. With Sony recently scrapping a Bluepoint-led live service God of War multiplayer game, and with Santa Monica Studio reportedly working on an entirely new IP, the future of God of War, at an official, confirmed capacity from Santa Monica Studio themselves, seems uncertain. But let's be real here. God of War is one of the most successful games for Sony, let alone the entire industry, and this rumor from Jeff Grubb has some weight to it, especially since it reflects an earlier rumor from another credible insider. The original rumor suggesting the series would return to Greece in the next game came from Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming mere days ahead of the State of Play in February. Speaking on his weekly Insider Gaming podcast, Henderson mentioned that he received information from an unnamed source that points to God of War returning to ancient Greece, but not of the Kratos we know of from the Norse setting, but rather a prequel featuring young Kratos. What I've been told, the God of War game isn't set in Egypt. It's actually set in Greece, remarks Henderson, and it's gonna be a younger Kratos this time. In the podcast, he claims that he's unsure whether it has anything to do with the much-rumored remasters of the original trilogy, stating that it could be some sort of reboot or even a prequel featuring the setting that started the series. Henderson makes it clear that he's not fully convinced that this is the direction the series is going, remarking, "So yeah, That's what I'm hearing at the moment, but like I said, don't run with it, making it clear that this is just early information and that we just gotta wait and see what Santa Monica Studio has in store for us. With both Henderson and now Grubb reporting that they heard mumblings about Kratos returning to ancient Greece, we can infer a number of things here. 1. Potentially, the earlier rumors of there being a Greek Saga remaster could have been misconstrued for this potential new game that may feature Kratos back in ancient Greece, meaning a remaster of the PS2, PSP, and PS3 games were never, in fact, in development, but that it was a brand new God of War game featuring a return to the original setting all along. And 2, and likely the one that this may end up being should a return to Greece punctuate the next game, this new Greek setting God of War game actually may not be a prequel featuring young Kratos, but could potentially see older Kratos return to Greece to see the current state of the land he once massacred through. This lines up with what transpired following the events of the conclusion of the Valhalla DLC in God of War Ragnarok, where Kratos essentially comes to terms with his younger, more vengeful self, reflecting on the journey that got him to the present moment he finds himself in the Norse setting. By returning to Greece for a brief venture, this could provide even more reflection and perhaps even new discoveries in the realm he once called home, running into unexpected dangers along the way that could set up the next mainline God of War game that would likely feature an entirely new mythology and gods to interact with. Essentially, this potential 2025 Greek setting side story title could be the stepping stone that leads us to the third era of God of War, and makes a lot of sense from a story standpoint. All throughout the Norse games, we heard Kratos reflect on his vengeful past. A return to ancient Greece would be a full circle moment for not just Kratos, but for the franchise, as a smaller side game along the lines of something like Spider-Man Miles Morales or Uncharted The Lost Legacy could provide a smaller yet awesome glimpse into what may be in store for us when the series truly takes that next big step forward and introduces us to the next pantheon of God of War, likely to ensue in the PlayStation 6 generation. Those are just my thoughts here on this potential 2025 God of War game, but let me know your thoughts on this possible game in the comments. Would you like to see Kratos in the series return to ancient Greece? Sign me the up. Speaking of the future of the God of War series, earlier this year, insider Daniel Richtman reported that Santa Monica Studio was casting Middle Eastern actors for an unknown AAA game, of which he believes to be a God of War game set in Egyptian mythology. This is certainly a possibility for God of War going forward, as Cory Barlog did address that ancient Egypt was initially the direction the series was going to take after the conclusion of God of War 3. And while Kratos has been to Egypt via the novel God of War Fallen God, he didn't exactly spend much time in that setting. Given that there are many references to Egyptian mythology throughout the Norse saga of God of War, there is still a good chance that God of War heads over to ancient Egypt for a future outing, and the recruitment of these actors, while a possibility for the studio's unannounced IP, could very likely be for the next mainline God of War game set in ancient Egypt. In October 2024, Santa Monica Studio posted a job listing on their website for a senior environmental artist that gave some insight into where this talent would be needed, with this role pertaining to Santa Monica Studio's next-generation narrative combat game. A narrative combat game is very much aligned with God of War, but could of course be applied to their unannounced title as well. But perhaps most interestingly is the prospect of next generation, implying that this would be for the PS6. With the PS5 Pro already available, and with Sony having said that they are currently into the second half of the PS5 generation, this job listing rules out the potential for an imminent release, as leaked documents suggest the PS6 is releasing in 2028. If this all happens to be true, this title is at the very least 3 to 4 years away from releasing, so Santa Monica Studio is looking far ahead for at least one of their projects here. So, potentially the recent hires going on at Santa Monica Studio for the next-gen narrative combat game asking for experience with the God of War systems, along with the hiring of voice talent from the Middle East, could reflect what may be a future God of War game that we will end up seeing many years down the road. At the end of the day, we don't really know what's going on with the God of War series. While it's unfortunate to know that these remasters didn't drop around the 20th anniversary, I'm 100% sure we will see remasters of these older games in the future. The fact that we don't yet have any real means of accessing these games outside of booting them up on their native platforms just begs for them to get re-released on not just the PS5, but also the growing PC market. On top of that, God of War continues to get more and more popular. With the Prime Video series slated to produce 2 seasons of the upcoming God of War show, along with more games coming in the future, it's still an exciting time to be a God of War fan, especially if we do end up getting a God of War game later this year like Jeff Grubb believes. Join me over in this video if you'd like to learn more about what lies ahead for us in 2025 with Resident Evil, and that's all I have for you in this one. I look forward to seeing you all real soon in the next video.